Like other directors before him, George Stevens became obsessed with classical paintings of Christ. He soaked himself in centuries of New Testament art until, in the end, he became a prisoner of it.
I looked forward to the Last Supper, which we always have seen, say, one-dimensional in paintings. But now we had the camera there, so I thought, now finally we're going to see, say, a round table with the disciples and Jesus gathered together, and they will come close to each other, and they will be able to face each other, and we will get a chance to come very close to them. Instead, Stevens copied Da Vinci's classical painting. And I remember the scene with the Lazarus sequence, when Jesus walks up to the tomb, and I felt that it would have been wrong just to, from the beginning, to know exactly what to do. I felt that this is a moment where Jesus should ask for help from his heavenly Father. So I asked Stevens whether it would be proper to use some kind of a prayer, and I found a little piece in Isaiah, I believe, which I think I was allowed to use just before opening the tomb and calling Lazarus out.
Who is like thee, O Father, in heaven, majestic in holiness, terrible in glorious deeds, doing wonders? There is none that can deliver out of thy hand. You wound and you heal. You kill and you make alive. Come from the four winds, O breath, and breathe upon this man, that he may live.
As one of Hollywood's most bankable directors, George Stevens was allowed to spend millions on expensive locations. But this film would be his first box office failure. Hollywood would never again risk big money on the Jesus story.
I saw, when I was making a film about my father, I saw an interview that he did where he had just been to a screening of the film. And even though the film, by those who measure films only by their bank accounts, was a failure, though it received critical acclaim and was appreciated by many audiences, he said in this interview, he said, if I had to do it over again, I said, I think I'd do it just about the same way.
And that's the way I would do it again if I had to do it again. Don't know whether I could get a loan big enough to go into it, but on that premise.
In Europe, a low-budget movie would have much greater impact. The director, Pier Paolo Pasolini, was a 60s Marxist who'd twice been arrested for blasphemy. Yet his version of Matthew's Gospel was not the stridently irreverent movie that the church had expected. With typical audacity, Pasolini offered the part of Jesus to a Spanish student who'd never acted before.
I refused instantaneously. I thought that movies were not serious. Resistance, fighting fascism, was serious, and I had no time to waste.
Non crediate che io sia venuto a portare pace sulla terra. Io non sono venuto a portare la pace, ma la spada. Perché sono venuto a dividere l'uomo dal padre suo, e la figliola dalla madre sua, e la nuora dalla suocera sua.
Pasolini directed me basically in two different ways. One, when I had to talk to the bad guys, to the mean people, the Pharisees, where he was telling me to forget about what happened 2,000 years ago. Imagine that this kind of people would be the butchers or the political police in Franco's times, the bourgeoisie behind fascism, and I didn't have to make any effort to play angry, because I was.
Vattene lontano da me, Satana! Tu mi sei di scandalo, perché pensi come gli uomini, non come Dio.
After playing in a movie that got 2 international Catholic prizes, that was projected officially to the Pope and the cardinals in Rome in 1964, late 1964, I was accused in Spain of having participated in a movie of communist propaganda. So they took my passport away. I was punished for 15 months in the military service in the Pyrenees. I was thrown out of the university for a year. I had to go to Paris to study, and so on.
I think it's a difficult film, partly because he seems to have gone for a kind of Brechtian style. By this I mean that the scenes are very fragmentary. It's a kind of epic narrating style without necessarily a strong forward momentum. It has a slightly choppy feel to it.
I think his goal was to bring within reach of everybody an epical figure, to give them back to this kind of people that had this figure alienated for centuries to them. When Christ became a part of the almighty church, used politically, used ideology in an ideological way, he wanted to give them back, give to plain people back this figure that had absolutely nothing to do with the ideological Jesus Christ. I sympathize with this a lot.